Did somebody say freedom? We're in my neck of the woods now, to the greatest country in God's green earth, the land of freedom and liberty, America! Alright, I'm joking around, guys. I'm not that overly patriotic. Um, I'm not gonna be like the entire reaction. I mean, like, yes, America, come in, American W. America can do no wrong, America. Sorry, I'm in a good mood right now. I passed all my classes for what was it? Oh yeah, my fall semester for I'm trying to get like a paralegal certificate right now so I can get a job as a paralegal, and I have my first semester. Like, I've been out of school since like May of 2025 when I graduated with my bachelor's, and so around February I began I enrolled into into a college so I can take paralegal classes. And like, there were like 10 mandatory classes, and so for my first semester from February all the way until, yeah, now, well, this is recorded in June, it's coming out in July, but February to June I took 5 paralegal classes. It was overwhelming. I was very overwhelmed. I'm very stressed, and that's when I learned English classes and paralegal law classes are not the same thing, but I still passed all 5 of my classes, so I'm very happy at the moment. I'm feeling very victorious right now, and so I've decided to watch this video, and I'm in a really good mood. But like I said, I'm not overly patriotic. I'm not gonna, be like that. But with that said, I am very proud to be an American. I honestly do think that I wouldn't want to be anything else. I'm very glad to have been born and raised here, and I'm proud of, my identity, and whatnot. But with that said, I've avoided touching America on this channel like the plague. Like, the only time I can think of where I like touched American history really was like the oversimplified American Revolution videos. But like, that was like the very beginning of this channel like 3 years ago. So like, I've kind of avoided American history, though. Recommendations have popped up because, like I said, I prefer to watch things that I'm not familiar with, and I'm a bit too familiar with American history. But I noticed Epic History released this long video, and so I'm kind of happy that I don't have to watch the individual parts. I get to just watch. It seems like the first part, I'm not sure where he stops, so I'm really happy to be able to watch this all at once. So I've decided, well, also July 4th is coming up, um, which is a very big event here in America. So I decided, just to kind of keep on brand with what's going on over here, I'm going to be reacting to this. And yeah, I guess I'm finally ready to start touching on American history. So I'm very excited about this, guys. And it'll be kind of weird touching on my own country for once. But well, first, it'll be a journey, I'm sure. So, enough of my yapping. We should probably get straight to the video. But first, if you want to watch the original video by Epic History, the link is down in the description down below. And if you enjoy my channel and you want to help me out in any way, shape, or form, feel free to please like, comment, subscribe, and maybe consider becoming a Patreon member. You get early access and exclusive content. So, yeah. Now with that said, and now without any further ado, let's do
1763. The 7 Years' War, a global conflict fought by European powers, is at an end. And the British Empire has emerged victorious. Dominating its French and Spanish rivals, it claims new territory in India, the West Indies, and above all, North America. France must accept the loss of nearly all its colonies. 3 million square miles of land, comparable in size to all Europe.
Yeah, holy crap. Yeah, after the 7 Years War, we mainly covered the 7 Years War through Frederick the Great, the Frederick the Great House of History series. Um, but yeah, we mainly looked at it through the European front through Prussia, but my goodness, is that a heavy loss for France? Holy crap.
The British now rule an empire on which the sun never sets.
You have to give it to the British. Like I said, I've said this before, but the British are probably the nation who came closest to world domination because, yeah, they had so much like power. It really is insane. They were like the largest empire known to man.
But in victory, the seeds of future conflict are sown. The enormous cost of the war has ballooned Britain's national debt. Interest payments alone consume more than half its annual spending. And the vast new territories in America will need defending from bitter imperial rivals who will look for any chance to reverse Britain's gains. Native American tribes also pose a threat, especially those that are former allies of the French. In 1763, Chief Pontiac of the Odawa leads a revolt against the British. There is bloodshed along the frontier as every British fort west of the Appalachians comes under attack. But the greatest challenge will come not from external enemies, but from the very colonies Britain seeks to protect.
I needed some inspiration for how to wear them.
What then is the American, this new man? He is an American who, leaving behind him all his ancient prejudices and manners, receives new ones from the new mode of life he has embraced.
157 years have passed since the first British colony was founded in North America.
Jamestown.
Now, there are 26 British colonies in North America and the West Indies. 13 of these lie along America's eastern seaboard, where after years of prosperity and immigration, the population has passed 2 million. Arguably, there is more that divides these 13 colonies than unites them. Each has its own distinct character, history, and form of government. Several were founded by those seeking religious freedom in the New World. The Puritans who settled Massachusetts, the Catholics of Maryland, and Quakers of Pennsylvania. Each colony has its share of rugged pioneers and economic opportunists, enticed by promises of plentiful land. But there are also many who arrive destitute, desperate, or against their will. Slavery is legal in all 13 colonies. In the north, enslaved Africans are a small minority, about 5% of the population. But in the south, the economy is dominated by slave plantations that grow rice, tobacco, and indigo. In Virginia, African slaves make up around 40% of the population. In South Carolina, 60%.
I'm very happy that he's breaking down the diversity because, like, with any other nation, it's easy to just kind of lump, like, the Americans all together. You know, like, oh, they're the Americans, they're the colonies, and whatnot. But there was a lot of differences. Often you'll hear about the North and the South, right? Like, the South economy definitely being very dominated and benefiting a lot from slavery. And even the fight for independence wasn't as like unanimous as you would think at first. It wasn't just like, okay, we all want independence now. That there was actually pushback and debate among the founding fathers, you know, some groups. Um you know, like the voting system. A really great series I would recommend it, to kind of get some cool insight is the John Adams HBO show. Like, you know, the I think it's like such a great portrayal of the founding fathers, and even getting the Declaration of Independence passed and all that. It really is just something that was not done as easily as you might think, despite the tensions with the UK. And again, yeah, the slavery thing. A lot of people, you know, like, it is something that I've always been disappointed about in my country, is the fact that we had slaves despite our, you know, desire for freedom as we frame the American Revolution. Meanwhile, we kept slaves for a long time, you know? And a big reason why you'll hear people say, why didn't they do away with slavery? This is a pretty good statistics of showing why, because they said there probably would have already, the nation was fragile, you know, and we couldn't afford anything that could rock the boat and like divide us when we needed to be united more than ever, especially as a new fledgling, you know, nation. We couldn't afford a straight up like succession or civil war. And so that's a big reason why you'll hear people say that like slavery was an issue not dealt with right away. And again, it is something that disappoints me, and I understand. I've heard many of that's usually the most common explanation. But it is something that I've always been very disappointed in that it's an issue we put off for so long, and it came back to bite America in the Civil War. Um, but yeah, like I said, America is, to its own credit, very diverse. Even back then, I know, especially now, but very different groups, religious ideas, north and south. Like, it is still a miracle that everyone managed to unite and still get through it. That alone is still very miraculous, I think, despite issues like this and differences.
Early settlers had been overwhelmingly from England, but in recent decades the picture has begun to change, with more immigrants from Ireland, Scotland, and Germany. All have helped to shape a new American culture, which makes a sharp impression on visitors. It is less deferential, more enterprising, increasingly self-confident. Old ties with the motherland are not what they used to be. For most of their history, the relationship between the British government and its American colonies has been one of salutary neglect. The colonies had been largely left to manage their own affairs, while Britain focused on more lucrative possessions in the West Indies and India. But this is about to change. Britain faces an extraordinary debt crisis, and many expect the colonies to help meet the cost of their own defense.
Yep.
It seems a reasonable expectation. The average American's tax burden is a fraction of that paid by the average Briton. By one calculation, a Briton pays 26 shillings a year in tax. A New Englander, 1 shilling. But it is the manner in which the British government goes about raising taxes that will put it and the colonies on a collision course.
If America looks to Great Britain for protection, she must enable us to protect her. If she expects our fleets, she must assist our revenue.
British Prime Minister George Grenville is determined to fix the country's spiralling debt crisis. He believes new colonial taxes must be part of the solution. In 1764, he proposes 2 new revenue-raising measures. A Sugar Act, which actually lowers the tax on foreign sugar and molasses, but only as part of a determined effort to ensure more effective collection. And a Stamp Act, which will tax all commercial and legal documents, from newspapers and playing cards to attorneys' licenses and land grants. These relatively minor taxes are not expected to cause much fuss. Englishmen have been paying them for 70 years. But to the surprise of the British government, the reaction in the colonies is uproar.
Yeah.
The Stamp Act particularly hits merchants, lawyers and business owners, the most articulate and influential members of colonial society. They condemn the measures in newspapers and a flood of pamphlets.
This tax will deprive us of all our invaluable rights and privileges. It will drain us suddenly of our cash, occasion an entire stagnation of trade, discourage every kind of industry, and involve us in the most abject slavery.
Opposition focuses less on the financial burden than on the principle of consent. American.
Yes, no taxation without representation. Yeah, so definitely, it's kind of funny how many like successions and civil wars and stuff in history has been caused, and the core cause of it in the center is through taxation and money, right? It is kind of like interesting when I think about all the conflicts that we've seen, and that plays a big part even here in America. Just wait till the tax of the tea. That's when it goes overboard. But it does kind of show this. I'm very happy he's kind of giving the English perspective, because obviously here in America we have a very pro-American way of viewing a lot of things, obviously, and I do like that he's putting into perspective the whole like that the British thought, well, these are kind of reasonable, like these taxes, like the people out, the people here in Great Britain pay way more. In fact, the Americans have it easier compared to stuff, so this really shouldn't like be a big problem. I think that's very interesting, and it definitely is like a very logical mindset when you put yourself in through the British perspective, right? But it also goes to show, as he mentioned earlier, that there is a divide between the two. Like what started off as like English settlers and whatnot, like have kind of developed their own culture and their own identity outside of Great Britain, and of course, many of the founding fathers still saw themselves as Englishmen. But there is, whether they fully understood it or not, a difference, and they're not on the same page as one would think, right? There is a difference just that has evolved between those from the motherland and those here in New England, America. So, and I think this is a great showing of the differences between the two as they're rearing its ugly head,
Protest that they have no representation in the British Parliament and can accept no taxation without representation. It is their rights as British subjects, they point out, rights protected by the British Constitution, that are being trampled on. Prime Minister George Grenville argues the American colonies have virtual representation in Parliament. That is, their interests are represented in a general way by all British MPs. After all, even most Britons don't have the right to vote in a general election. Grenville's argument does not win many backers, even in Parliament itself, where electoral reform is a fierce battleground.
There's an idea, in some, that the colonies are virtually represented in the House. I would fain know by whom an American is represented here. Is he represented by any knight of the Shire in any county in this kingdom? Or will you tell him that he is represented by any representative of a borough? A borough which perhaps its own representatives never saw. This is what is called the rotten part of the Constitution. It cannot continue a century.
The Speaker is Pitt the Elder, a renowned former Prime Minister, who adds
that this kingdom has no right to lay a tax upon the colonies.
What greater glory can New England see than stamp men hanging from a tree? Oh my gosh, yeah. There's also, yeah, like the violence did kind of start to escalate, especially like tarring and fettering, which is a practice I think you'll touch on and you'll see. Like I said, for those of you who aren't from America or just haven't seen this, I really recommend check out the John Adams HBO show. It's a really great insight into the era, and I would recommend it. I saw it in 8th grade. Like for a history class, our teacher just played all the full series, and it was, to this day, it's still like really like really amazing to me. In fact, I've been thinking of just doing a reaction to it on this channel, the John Adams HBO show, because like I said, I only saw it in 8th grade, and that was like over a decade ago, so I would recommend it, really.
Throughout 1765, colonial assemblies meet to protest against the new acts. In the Virginia House of Burgesses, Patrick Henry emerges as one of the most radical leaders of colonial resistance. He proposes a series of resolutions, which are adopted by the House.
Resolved, that the first adventurers and settlers of His Majesty's colony and Dominion of Virginia brought with them all the liberties, privileges, and immunities that have at any time been held, enjoyed, and possessed by the people of Great Britain. Resolved, that the taxation of the people by themselves, or by persons chosen by themselves to represent them, is the only security against a burdensome taxation.
But there are bitter divisions within the Virginia Assembly. Some members believe Patrick Henry goes too far. Loyalty to Britain and the British Crown is deep-rooted. Conservative members succeed in removing his most radical resolution, that only Virginia's assembly has the authority to raise taxes in the colony. Among the regular observers at these debates, a brilliant 22-year-old law clerk named Thomas Jefferson. The divisions in Virginia are mirrored across the colonies as debate grows more heated and protests turn violent. Tax collectors are beaten up by mobs, driven out of town, or forced to resign. Tax documents are destroyed. Effigies of royal governors are burned or hanged from liberty trees. Meanwhile, delegates from 9 of the 13 colonies meet in New York, where they draft a petition to the British King, George III, and Parliament. While assuring Crown and Parliament of their unwavering loyalty, the delegates declare that it is their right, as Englishmen, to have no taxes imposed upon them without their consent. Colonial merchants begin to organize a boycott of British goods. The uproar, the possible damage to trade, plus the fact the taxes are clearly unenforceable, finally forces the British government to back down. The following year, 1766, the Sugar Act and Stamp Act are scrapped by a new British Prime Minister, Lord Rockingham.
Again, that's a very significant moment. It really goes to show you, because still Britain, what the Britain, I'm so sorry. Is still on the rise of becoming like one of it already is one of the greatest nations in the world at this point, right? And they're still on the rise. I mean, I know that the financial strains are definitely complicated, but they're still incredibly powerful. So to put up this much of, you know, a resistance towards their overlord, especially one of the greatest nations in the world, and actually get them to back down on something, it's still like a really good, like, it's a really powerful moment and a very big one in, like, you know, the step into the forming of America. You're already seeing that resistance and, you know, that'll only grow stronger as America becomes more emboldened. So again, very, very cool moment.
The colonies have won a major victory.
Certainly.
But the British Parliament does not back down over its right to raise taxes in America. The same day it repeals the taxes, it declares,
Parliament assembled had, hath, and of right ought to have full power and authority to make laws and statutes of sufficient force and validity to bind the colonies and people of America, in all cases whatsoever.
The words seem calculated to outrage America's colonial assemblies and convince many that though this storm has passed, another will surely follow.
Suppose a military force is sent into America. They will not find a rebellion. They may indeed make one. Psh. Yeah, Big B is completely right about that. That's my nickname for Benjamin Franklin, Big B. I'm sorry. But yeah, the escalating tension, the tension is so palpable you can cut it with a knife.
Tell Monday what you need. We're creating
1767. 1 year on, Parliament passes a new series of measures to raise revenue from the colonies and demonstrate its authority over them. They are named after the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Townshend Acts.
Yep.
In the
Yep. Tax on glass, lead, paint, paper, and most importantly, tea. Okay, Customs Board established to enforce shipping regulations, reduce taxes on the British East India Company of tea. It's the tea that really did it, guys. That's where, like, maybe the situation could have been salvaged, but once the tea got involved, no, that was too far.
13 colonies, they are met with howls of protest. Royal administrators are chased out of towns. Some tax officials are tarred and feathered. A brutal punishment, where the victim is paraded through the streets, covered in scalding tar.
I know, some people died from that, like, holy crap. Yeah, the American response was very violent, as you see, like, a lot of, like, straight-up destroying property. Like, America definitely, well, the Americans were definitely, you know, their response was not, like, as much so, as peaceful as you might think at first. Like, it's, I still remember this scene from, like, the John Adams show. They actually show that. I was thinking, like, holy crap, guys. But then again, no one likes a tax collector or anything like that, so... Probably the most dangerous job one could have back then. Like, you're always gonna be hated.
A new term emerges for these rabble-rousers: patriots.
Ugh!
Colonists who seek to avoid confrontation with Parliament become known as loyalists. Many communities, and even families, will soon be divided between these two camps. Though for now, most are somewhere in the middle. Among the patriots in New England are a group calling themselves
Sons of Liberty?
the Sons of Liberty.
Yes! Yeah, so the Sons of Liberty, pretty cool group. I believe Samuel Adams, who's related to the second president, John Adams, was also a pretty big figure in this, if I'm remembering correctly. And also he was a pretty big voice of the Patriots earlier on. I can't wait till we get to the Boston Tea Party.
Led by Samuel Adams,
Yep.
they include merchant and smuggler John Hancock, physician Joseph Warren, and silversmith Paul Revere.
Yep. I mean, it's cool to really know all these people. And John Hancock, famous for writing his name really big as the ultimate, like, middle finger. And Paul Revere, his ride and whatnot. Very, very legendary.
The crisis comes to a head in Massachusetts. Boston has been a hotbed of Patriot activity since the Stamp Act. And tension rises when British soldiers are quartered here in 1768.
Also, like, the Boston Massacre, I believe, is a big catalyst as well. I said it was the Boston Tea Party, right? I think it was the Boston Tea Party. But yeah, it's called the Boston Massacre, right? Wait, let me check. Yeah, so the Boston Tea Party and the Boston Massacre, both events that took place here. It goes to show you how big of a hotbed Boston was, eh?
On the 5th of March, 1770, an altercation between soldiers and locals turns into a tense standoff. Taunted by an angry crowd, hundreds strong, pelted with snowballs and rocks, the small British detachment loses its nerve and opens fire. 5 local men are killed. The Boston Massacre, as it becomes known, is powerful propaganda for the Patriot cause. The news carried in pamphlets and prints, the most famous created by Paul Revere. Blood has been spilt. Emotions are running high.
Let the 5th of March never be forgot,
Writes Bostonian Samuel Savage in his diary. Many anticipate a downward spiral into violence and disorder.
These meals changed everything for me.
The inhabitants are greatly enraged, and not without reason.
Despite the bloodshed in Boston, there are many on both sides who seek to de-escalate the crisis between British, Loyalists and Patriots. The British governor of Massachusetts, Thomas Hutchinson, withdraws the troops from Boston and has those involved in the shooting put on trial. They are
Yeah, I think they're defended by John Adams, who I really do have a lot of admiration for John Adams for many reasons we'll probably cover a bit more later, but this is very telling, right? I believe it's John Adams who defends the British soldiers, and which is a very ballsy move in itself, considering who his relative Samuel Adams is and what you know, some of the more radical Americans are doing to the British, right? Like, yet he still did it. Like, I don't know, to me that's very that speaks volumes about the guy.
acquitted of murder thanks to the efforts of their skilled lawyer, a noted patriot, John Adams. In Britain, there is a new Prime Minister, Lord North. A close friend of the King and staunch advocate of parliamentary authority, he will serve in the role for the next 12 years. The economic damage of colonial boycotts persuades him to repeal Townshend's new taxes. All but one, on tea.
Oh boy. Oh no.
Relative calm returns to the colonies. The boycott is lifted. A second crisis has been weathered. But in New England, hostility towards the British government lingers. Here, local merchants rely on ships and trade, and have long resented British imperial rules, which restrict their commerce with other nations. Many patriots, like John Hancock, make extra money by smuggling goods into the colonies, bypassing British import duties. British efforts to clamp down on smuggling do not make them any more popular. Royal Navy warships are used to inspect and seize vessels belonging to prominent local figures, like John Hancock. To the outrage of New England merchants, the British also begin trying suspected smugglers in special Vice Admiralty courts, rather than the more sympathetic local courts. In 1772, the Sons of Liberty hit back, boarding the Royal Navy schooner HMS Gaspé and setting it ablaze. Meanwhile, in Britain, the Empire's largest corporation is on the verge of bankruptcy. The East India Company has a monopoly on British trade with India, China, and the East Indies. But a credit crisis now threatens its survival. In 1773, to help keep the company afloat, Parliament grants it the right to sell tea directly to the American colonies. The company also receives tariff exemptions that will make its tea cheaper than that of the local smugglers. But a small tax of 3 pence per pound of tea remains in place. The new Tea Act thus threatens the profits of local smugglers and provokes patriots on the principle of taxation without representation. As 7 company ships cross the Atlantic, packed with 250 tons of tea, the Sons of Liberty and others pressure tea dealers to reject the shipments. When one ship arrives in Philadelphia, thousands of locals threaten anyone who helps to unload its cargo. Most of the ships are forced to turn back. In Boston, however, Governor Thomas Hutchinson has had enough of boycotts. He ensures that 3 company ships enter the harbor.
See, there used to be...
Yeah, we finally get into the Boston Tea Party. I can't remember, but I've heard stories that they dressed as Indians when they did this. Like, the Boston Tea Party. I'm not sure if that actually happened. That's something I've heard. Like, they dress as, like, Native Americans, so... Yeah, very interesting. Either way, I know at least about the Tea Party itself.
On a December evening in 1773, members of the Sons of Liberty board the ships, disguised as Native Americans. They've chosen these costumes as a symbol of their...
Do you think they like wore the equivalent, like you know when you're like when like actors used to put like blackface or like You think they went that far? Or it was just the costumes, just like white guys, like just wearing native garments, or did they go the extra like effort of like painting? I don't know why I'm thinking about that, but like maybe it's because we just watched Lawrence of Arabia, the movie, and then we have Sir Alec Guinness, aka Obi-Wan in brownface, playing an Arab, so I guess that's kind of a little fresh on my mind. So yeah, Lawrence of Arabia actually drops at the exact same day this should drop, so feel free to check it out. I put a lot of effort in that movie. It's 4 hours long, but I got it on YouTube. I had to edit it down, obviously, to 2, but that's still quite a bit, so feel free to check it out. I'm making movie reactions a new monthly thing. First day of every month, first Monday of every month, a new movie reaction alongside a new epic history video, so yeah, we're gonna party the first Monday of every month. Starting now, this Monday.
New American identity. They break open 340 chests of tea and dump the contents into the harbour. 92,000 pounds of tea in all, with a value today of nearly $2 million.
Holy crap.
Patriots celebrate the Boston Tea Party as a bold act of defiance. And it is just the most famous of several such acts in numerous ports and towns. According to Patriot lawyer John Adams,
this is the most magnificent movement of all. There is a dignity, a majesty, a sublimity in this last effort of the Patriots that I greatly admire. The people should never rise without doing something to be remembered, something notable and striking.
The reaction in London is rather different. The British government sees only lawlessness, mob rule, and an outrageous attack on private property. Enough is enough. If the government does not act firmly now, its authority in North America will lie in tatters. The time for restraint is over. The gloves are coming off.
Whatever may be the consequence, we must risk something. If we do not, all is over. Cowabunga it is.
April 1774. 11 years have passed since British victory in the 7 Years' War. And since that moment, ties between the 13 colonies and the motherland have been under increasing strain. Much of the dispute is over the British Parliament's right to tax the colonies, a right fiercely contested by many colonists. But it is also a conflict over sovereignty, about who governs in North America. On the frontier, and for all colonists who have a stake in westward expansion, there are added reasons to resent the British government. This is where the 7 Years' War, known locally as the French and Indian War, had started. The first shots were fired in 1754 in Ohio country by troops under the command of a 22-year-old Lieutenant Colonel George Washington.
Okay. The big G has arrived.
After the war, the British hoped to end clashes with Native American tribes and bring peace to the frontier. To this end, in 1763, a royal proclamation is issued, which imposes limits on further westward expansion beyond the Appalachian Mountains into the land now termed Indian Territory. For colonial land speculators, pioneers, and farmers, the proclamation cuts off access to a vast source of cheap land and stokes further anti-parliamentary feeling. The colony's list of grievances seems to grow year by year. And with each new attempt by the British Parliament to assert its authority, colonial resistance grows fiercer and bolder. The destruction of 46 tons of East India Company tea in the so-called Boston Tea Party is the final straw. Lord North's government decides to make an example of Boston and the colony of Massachusetts. In the spring of 1774, the British send 4,000 troops to occupy the colony and pass a series of measures known as the Coercive Acts. The governor is replaced by a new military governor, General Gage. Boston's port is closed to commerce by Royal Navy blockade. Representative assemblies in Massachusetts are limited, and it becomes easier for British troops to requisition housing throughout the colonies. The British government also passes the Quebec Act. To appease French Canadians, Catholicism is to be tolerated in Canada, angering staunch New England Protestants. Large tracts of Midwestern land...
Literally everything that Britain does pisses off America. Like, it's like when you're playing a video game and you just make all the wrong decisions. It's kind of amazing, just everything. It's like, wow.
Are also allocated to the province of Quebec, further antagonizing American colonists who had their eyes on the land. In America, the Coercive Acts are quickly labeled the Intolerable Acts, and the effect is the opposite of that intended. The colonies rally in support of Massachusetts and in defiance of the latest act of parliamentary tyranny. In Virginia, the House of Burgesses declares its support for Massachusetts and is promptly shut down by the royal governor, Lord Dunmore. So Virginians reconvene in their own assemblies and once more call for their rights under the British Constitution to be upheld. One of the most radical statements comes from Fairfax County, where the meeting is chaired by local patriot landowner George Washington. 10 years earlier, the colonies had not dared to claim that only they had the right to govern themselves. Now, they don't hold back.
Resolved, as the inhabitants of the American colonies are not, and from their situation cannot, be represented in the British Parliament, the legislative power here can of right be exercised only by our own provincial assemblies. Resolved, the powers over the people of America now claimed by the British House of Commons must, if continued, establish the most grievous and intolerable species of tyranny and oppression that ever was inflicted upon mankind.
Virginian patriots call for a Congress composed of delegates from the colonies to meet and discuss a collective response to the latest crisis. Such calls are echoed across the colonies, and in September 1774, the First Continental Congress meets in Carpenter's Hall, Philadelphia.
Legendary.
It is attended by 56 delegates from 12 of the 13 colonies. Among them, several men who will play key roles in the struggle ahead. John and Samuel Adams of Massachusetts, self-made men incensed by the British occupation of their colony. John Dickinson, a moderate from Pennsylvania who seeks reconciliation with Britain. And Patrick Henry, the radical from Virginia, who holds what for most is still an extreme position, total independence from Great Britain. Despite their divisions, a compromise is reached. The colonies agree to boycott all British goods until the intolerable acts are repealed. They will also send another petition to King George III, listing their grievances, while expressing continued loyalty and desire for reconciliation.
We ask but for peace, liberty, and safety. Your royal authority over us and our connection with Great Britain, we shall always carefully and zealously endeavor to support and maintain.
Yeah, the king, if I remember correctly, did not have the greatest response to this. I think he escalated it with straight up threatening to hang or execute some people. I think that's how one of the responses went, which really helped further the like, if I remember correctly that happened, then yeah, it's just like every response from Great Britain was just the wrong one. It's really amazing, like the perfect storm of bad decisions and stuff like that.
Their petition never receives a formal response. The First Continental Congress cannot solve the crisis, but it has demonstrated that the colonies can come together to debate shared grievances and form a plan of action. The delegates are impressed with their fellow Americans and recognize the importance of their task. A new sense of solidarity inspires confidence that, if required, they can work together again for the common interest of all.
The disease was believed to have been confined to the town of Boston, but now it's so universal there's no knowing where to apply a remedy.
In America, the long history of colonial and frontier wars means most British colonies maintain their own militia. Now, these part-time citizen soldiers are training regularly under local officers, anticipating a confrontation with the British. It's a growing concern for General Thomas Gage, the British commander in North America, with 4,000 troops in Boston. He's also worried about the gunpowder reserves, held at strategic locations across Massachusetts, for use by government and militia forces. With tensions running high, control of the gunpowder becomes a priority for both sides. In September 1774, Gage sends 260 men to secure a powder magazine in Suffolk County, Massachusetts. In such a suspicious atmosphere, the sight of British redcoats on the march ignites wild rumours that villages are being attacked, civilians massacred, and that British warships are shelling Boston. None of them are true.
Yep.
Nevertheless, thousands of angry patriots gather in the streets of Cambridge, prompting local loyalists to flee to Boston. The patriots disperse the next day, but both sides are rattled by the incident. That winter, General Gage pulls his forces back within Boston and begins to fortify approaches to the city. He also requests reinforcements from Britain. Parliament delays. The British Army is tiny, and sending troops to America is expensive. But with each passing month, colonial opposition grows stronger and more impassioned. In February, Parliament declares parts of the colony of Massachusetts to be in active rebellion. On the 23rd of March 1775, Patrick Henry addresses the Virginia Convention.
If we were base enough to desire it, it is now too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard on the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat, sir, let it come. I know not.
Yeah, Henry had no chill. Like, the dude was right there from the beginning. He was locked in from the beginning.
What course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty
or death.
Or give me death.
Yes. Oh!
The following month, General Gage receives orders to disarm the local militia and arrest its leaders. He targets a small town...
Honestly, chilled, bro. Like, I've heard that a lot, but it's really cool to see that again. Like, give me liberty or give me death. Like, chilled, honestly.
80 miles from Boston, called Concord, where he believes Patriot munitions and stores are stockpiled. But the Patriot militia know the British are coming. And the long simmering standoff between Britain and its colonies is about to explode into open warfare.
Stand your guard. Don't fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here.
19th of April, 1775, Boston. Around midnight, 700 British infantry, drawn from elite grenadier and light infantry companies, cross Boston Harbor in boats and begin their march to Concord. They are led by 51-year-old Colonel Francis Smith, who's been stationed in America for 8 years. His operation is supposed to be secret. The route has been carefully planned, and British scouts and spies patrol the countryside. But the Patriots have their own spy network in Boston. And before the British have even left the city, several Patriot horsemen, including Paul Revere.
Yep. So I kind of want to share with some of you about, like, American mythology, as I call it, because there are some really funny, or like some things you'll hear about America, like, I call it mythology, legends, I guess. Like, a pretty famous one is, like, George Washington and the cherry tree when he was, like, 6 years old. Stuff like that. And Paul Revere's ride kind of enters that, because, like, a lot of times it's, like, the legend is he was running around yelling, the British are coming, or stuff like that. Which is not what he actually said. You know? And, you know, that he was some type of lone rider, but that's not really true either. Like, it was a network of riders carrying messages, and there's all kinds of signals, like bells and stuff. So, definitely in mythology, his role is, like, definitely more elevated and like, exaggerated than in real life, you know? So, yeah, some cool little American mythology facts for you.
Have ridden out to raise the alarm across eastern Massachusetts. In Lexington, militia captain John Parker is alerted to the approaching British column. He gathers 80 militiamen on the village green to observe their advance. Around dawn, at 5 a.m., the head of the British column arrives. Redcoat officers order the militiamen to lay down their arms. Shouts and jeers are traded. Then, a shot rings out. From which side is not clear. The British regulars fire a flurry of shots. The militia run for cover. 8 lie dead or dying. Just 1 British soldier is wounded.
Dang.
This small skirmish, lasting just a few minutes, is the first clash of the American Revolutionary War.
You. Just you.
The British march on to Concord. But the element of surprise they'd been counting on was lost hours ago. On arrival, the British discover most of the Patriot stores have been hidden or removed. They spread out across town to destroy what they can find. Meanwhile, a large militia force gathers to the north, on a hill overlooking the town. They include several companies of the famous Minutemen, picked men from local settlements ready to march at a minute's notice. 400 strong, they outnumber the British detachment guarding North Bridge 4-1. The militia are agitated. There are rumours of a massacre at Lexington. They can see smoke rising from Concord. Under pressure from his men to act, Militia Colonel James Barrett orders an advance to the bridge. Both sides.
Yeah, it's another interesting thing. You keep hearing about the Americans, these rumors about the British being total psychopath monsters, and all of this isn't really true. Like the massacres of, it is interesting because you often see sometimes in like American Revolution films or stuff, the British are portrayed as incredibly at times, like especially the least historically accurate ones, the British are portrayed as straight up psychopaths, or like their evil is greatly even more exaggerated, and it's like, it's definitely a bit, it's a bit exaggerated, so sometimes the massacres. I think like the Patriot with like Mel Gibson is a good example of like making the British seem like they're all like Hannibal Lecter-esque psychopaths who get off on like killing random people. I mean, obviously, regular people or folk are gonna suffer in war, but like sometimes it has been exaggerated in American mythology. The brutality of the British or whatever. So yeah.
Sides have orders not to fire first. But alarmed by the approaching militia, the British fire a ragged volley. The militia return fire. A handful of men fall killed and wounded on each side. The outnumbered redcoats turn and run. The militia, stunned by their own success, do not pursue. A standoff resumes, but now with bodies from both sides strewn across the battleground. The British commander, Colonel Smith, recognizes how exposed his force is, and around noon he orders his men to march back to Boston. By this time, thousands of Patriot militia are lining the road. They mount a series of ambushes on the British, targeting officers, several of whom are killed and wounded.
Oh, what a nightmare that has to be for them trying to get back. Holy crap.
The British respond by bursting into homes along the route to clear out rebel marksmen, bayoneting anyone they find within. The British march descends into a shambolic retreat. Around 2 p.m, Smith's force reaches Lexington. Here, they are met by reinforcements from Boston, Lord Percy's brigade, 1,000 strong, with 2 cannon. They face nearly 4,000 Patriot militia. Percy's 2 guns open fire, dispersing the militia and buying the British some time before the retreat continues. Lord Percy oversees a more disciplined fighting retreat, but militia sniping claims a steady toll of his men.
Yeah, this is insane. This, you know what kind of reminds me of? It's like Napoleon's retreat from like Russia. We've seen stuff like this, right? Just the way they're spawning and just enclosing upon these guys, trying their hardest to get back. Like, this is actually like, yeah, for like the British, this must be terrifying. Holy crap, they're just spawning from everywhere. Yeah, the objective is just to survive now and get out.
As the embattled Redcoats approach Boston, they veer east to avoid another large militia force gathering at Cambridge. They reach the safety of Charlestown around nightfall. Many British soldiers have been marching and fighting without rest for almost 24 hours.
That's insane. My goodness.
All told, the British have lost 73 men killed and 173 wounded. The Americans, 49 killed and 39 wounded. It was nearly much worse for the British. As Lord Percy later writes of his rescue of Smith's force,
I had the happiness of saving them from inevitable destruction.
Of their opponents, he adds,
Whoever dares to look upon them as an irregular mob will find himself much mistaken. They have men amongst them who know very well what they are about.
By the scale of 18th century warfare, the battles of Lexington and Concord are not much more than skirmishes. But the ramifications will be seismic.
Extremely, like that. I know the casualties aren't super high, but like, to this is like, you know, like causing the British to be on the back foot, getting as many kills as they did, like only emboldened the Americans, right? Especially those who were like, a bit weary about getting into it with the British. Now it's like, oh wow, we can actually like put up a fight, like, you know, like a staunch resistance. And I think like both sides are, it's like a realization on the British's part, that these aren't just a disorganized mob that they can just easily swat away. And on the Americans, it's, wow, we can actually, like, you know, we can throw hands if we have to. So yeah, like the implications are the most important part, really, about these conflicts.
What if you could make a song using...
I feel great distress from a consciousness that my abilities and military experience may not be equal to the extensive and important trust. Yes. George Washington was said to be, you know, the commander-in-chief, the head of the army. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I could be wrong, but if I'm remembering correctly, something like he showed up to the area in military uniform. So his humility is kind of something that's laughed at, like his whole, I'm not worthy of this honor, or this job that even other people wanted, and he showed up in a military uniform, or something like that, something to that vein, which some people kind of joke about. But George Washington really was a humble man, though. It's one of his virtues.
In the aftermath of the fighting, 15,000 militiamen encircle Boston. The British are under siege. Massachusetts is in open rebellion. The news spreads like a shockwave. 3 weeks later, a second Continental Congress gathers in Philadelphia. Delegates had expected to be busy coordinating further protests. But suddenly, with the colonies in open conflict with the British, they begin to take on the work of a wartime government. Congress appoints a committee to secure military supplies, votes to raise loans to pay for them, and issue bills of credit. It also passes resolutions to reach out to potential allies in Canada, Britain's Caribbean colonies, and among Native American tribes. Many delegates are veterans of the First Congress, but there are also new faces. The celebrated inventor Benjamin Franklin of Pennsylvania, who has returned from England. He is appointed Postmaster General with orders to establish a new postal service. Then there's the wealthy merchant John Hancock of Massachusetts. And in June, they are joined by the young lawyer Thomas Jefferson of Virginia.
You know, I have to say that, like, the founding fathers and, like, the whole creation of America really was a lightning in a bottle moment. I feel like this amount of, like, intelligent, innovative men who just all met up, you know, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and so on and so forth. It really was, like, the perfect storm, and, like, some of just the most talented, important, well-educated men just all uniting to create this new nation. It really is, like, mind-blowing and beyond awe-inspiring, in my opinion. Flawed men, yes, but still, like, very, very great in that sense.
But Congress's most urgent priority is to form a united Continental Army that can stand against the inevitable British response. It is obvious that the large militia forces around Boston will be the Army's foundation. But who will lead them? For many in Congress, there's only one man for the job. The 43-year-old Virginian delegate, George Washington. He is well known for his patriot views and admired for his military service in the French and Indian War. As a not-so-subtle reminder of his credentials, the 6'2" Washington attends Congress in his Fairfax militia officer's uniform.
Yeah, almost like that's like straight up like advertising himself, which makes his like whole like speech about, oh, this honor and stuff like, bro, you wanted the job. You showed up like this, you wanted the job. Washington, 6'8", weighs an effing ton. Opponents beware, opponents beware. He's coming, he's coming, he's coming. If you get that reference, you are a G.
John Adams, who nominates him for command, also believes appointing a Virginian to command New England troops will bolster the colony's unity.
Yeah, Virginia was really, like, rich and influential. So, you know, very, very shrewd move on Mr. Adams's part.
On the 15th of June, 1775, Congress unanimously approves Washington's appointment as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. He agrees to serve without pay, only expenses.
Turns out the...
Yet, he, like many Americans, is dismayed by the prospect of war.
Unhappy it is that the once happy and peaceful plains of America are either to be drenched with blood or inhabited by a race of slaves. Sad alternatives, but can a virtuous man hesitate in his choice?
In the tumultuous years ahead, many
Yeah, the famous painting of the crossing. This is like legendary. I think this might be the most famous American painting of all time. I've seen this painting ever since, as far as I can remember as a child, this image of Washington on the boat, or farming, while everyone's crossing. You know, it kind of does remind me of, like, Napoleon's crossing of the Alps and stuff like that, even though this one's probably way more accurate than, a little bit more than, Napoleon's, but yeah, like, kind of invokes the same image. And I keep forgetting that, like, Napoleon and, like, the founding fathers and, like, Washington were, like, contemporaries. Like, it feels, like, so different, but, like, they were around the same time, like, in the same era, so it's so wild to me. But yeah, this painting is beautiful, bro. It's honestly just like one of I would argue the most famous American painting of all time.
Many delegates will question the decision to give Washington command. But ultimately, it will prove one of the best decisions ever made by Congress.
Honestly, I can't envision anyone else doing this. Like, George Washington really was the perfect choice to do this, and the perfect choice to be the first American president. Like, honestly, inspiring. Yeah, I could not imagine anyone else doing what he did, or filling the shoes, you know?
The challenge Washington faces is immense. To form a professional army from scratch, with half-trained contingents from disparate colonies, to take on one of the world's most successful military powers.
Again, yeah, the British at this point are a great power on the world stage. Like, this is nothing short of a miracle, and like, a Herculean task that Washington has to perform.
And before Washington can even reach the army, he learns the British have already attacked. April 1775. A British ship carries an urgent message across the Atlantic to the American colonies. Britain's Parliament has passed a conciliatory resolution, a last-ditch effort by Prime Minister Lord North to avert conflict with the colonies. Now that resolution is en route to America. It is a 6-week voyage. By the time it arrives, the shooting has started at Lexington and Concord. Blood has been spilled. The war has begun. Lord North's conciliatory resolution is met with defiance in colonial assemblies and the Continental Congress. Its terms, which do not concede Parliament's right to tax the colonies, offer far too little, too late. The reply from Congress, written by Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Richard Henry Lee, is a litany of unredressed grievances. The Coercive Acts, the Quebec Act, Vice Admiralty Courts, the list goes on. Negotiations are faltering, with fatal consequences. The fighting will continue, and is about to reach bloody new heights.
Watch the FIFA World Cup.
These fellows say we won't fight. By heaven, I hope I shall die up to my knees in blood.
June 1775. The main British force in America is in Boston, commanded by General Thomas Gage. He has been reinforced to 6,000 regulars. But he is besieged by 15,000 New England militia. These men are highly motivated and have proven capable in combat, but they lack discipline and ammunition. Prior to the arrival of their new commander-in-chief, George Washington, they are under the command of Artemus Ward, a sickly 47-year-old militia officer of limited experience. Nevertheless, under his direction, the militia have fortified the heights overlooking the Charlestown Peninsula. From these positions, cannon could target British ships in Boston's inner harbour. General Gage decides he must eliminate this threat and decides to seize the heights as a step to breaking the siege. It will be an opportunity not only to avenge British honour, tarnished by the shambolic retreat from Concord. As General Burgoyne points out, it will also allay any doubt
that trained troops are invincible against any numbers or any position of undisciplined rabble.
Gage orders Major General William Howe to make a frontal assault on Breed's Hill with 2,500 men. They are supported by naval ships, a floating battery of mortars, and cannon from Copp's Hill. But the attack does not go to plan. Protected behind fences and earthworks, the undisciplined rabble pours a devastating, close-range fire into the British ranks.
Yeah, that definitely, there are some among the British who really still do see the militia of America definitely in a much less flattering way, you know, but I think like the Americans are definitely proving, no, we've got a lot more fight than a random unorganized mob, you know, so definitely a bit of a reality dose at times.
General Howe orders a second attack. It meets the same bloody repulse. Hundreds of regulars fall. Some British units lose half their men or more. Spurred on by the leadership of John Stark, James Reed, and Joseph Warren, the Patriot militia are holding their ground. But they are running out of ammunition. The chain of command has broken down.
Yeah, that's usually a big part when talking about this battle, is that often how it's been like kind of like summarized is that they were doing a fantastic, but like a big factor really was just the ammunition and gun. That was a big problem at this point. So you know, definitely a long drawn out fight wasn't fully possible.
Amid the chaos of battle, hundreds of reinforcements mill about in confusion on Bunker Hill, while their comrades fight for their lives. When Howe launches a third attack on Breed's Hill, the militia finally break in the face of British bayonets. The Redcoats' fury as they storm the redoubt is terrible. A British lieutenant is shocked by the slaughter.
I cannot pretend to describe the horror of the scene. It was streaming with blood and strewed with dead and dying men. The soldiers stabbing some and dashing out the brains of others was a sight too dreadful for me to dwell any longer on.
The British take the heights, but are in no condition to follow up their success. In what becomes known as the Battle of Bunker Hill, they have lost 200 dead and more than 800 wounded. By contrast, Patriot casualties are around 450, but include the charismatic Joseph Warren, president of the Massachusetts Provincial Congress. A commissioned officer who'd insisted on fighting as a private soldier, he was shot down in the redoubt during the final assault, becoming a martyr to the cause.
To be honest, sometimes...
For the Patriots, the battle, though a defeat, is a major morale boost. They have stood their ground against British Redcoats and tested them to the limit.
Yeah, again, like, even, it's just the implications, right? Because I think it's just because of how powerful Great Britain is still at this point, and any resistance from, because, yeah, the American colonies are the underdog in this situation, by however you look at it, you know, between Great Britain and them. So any resistance, even if it's like a tactical defeat, still inflicting more casualties and putting up staunch resistance, it's like a morale victory, oddly enough, you know? So it really does only serve to inspire the cause. Because if these were like complete curb stomp battles, then probably not. But like, you know, still, it is really cool to see, you know?
For the British, it is a lesson learned. The rebels' determination and fighting spirit must be taken seriously. As General Sir Henry Clinton remarks,
A few more such victories would have shortly put an end to British dominion in America.
they will not make the same mistake again.
Many of our subjects in North America, misled by dangerous and ill-designing men, have at length proceeded to open and avowed rebellion. At length.
That summer, British authority across the 13 colonies begins to disintegrate. The governors of North and South Carolina, Virginia, New York, and New Hampshire have all been forced to flee their homes. Others resign, while in Connecticut, John Trumbull sides with the Patriots. Only in New Jersey and Georgia do British-appointed governors retain any control. The British have barely any troops in America outside of Boston, a fact which is underscored when frontiersman Ethan Allen leads a band of New Hampshire militia to storm Fort Ticonderoga, held by a skeleton force of just 48 redcoats. The so-called Gibraltar of North America falls without a shot fired.
Dang.
And the rebels seize 59 heavy guns from its arsenal. Yet even now, there are those on both sides who seek a peaceful way out of the crisis. Moderates, like John Dickinson of Pennsylvania, believe the colonies are too divided among them.
Yeah, John Dickinson's a very interesting guy because often when you hear about, like, the Americans who wanted to resist the whole independence movement, his name is usually the most prominent that pops up. You know, sometimes it's some portrayal, it's like basically, you know, very much just all against independence entirely. And I believe he did not sign the Declaration of Independence. Some sayings go that he either did not show up or just refused. Even after, like, its signing, he still didn't put his name to it, I think. And some of his reasoning has been because he felt America, that he did see war as inevitable, but he just felt America just wasn't ready yet, or the time wasn't right, or just needed more unity. There's a lot of discussion about his mindset and everything, so a very interesting figure among this time.
Themselves to survive without British protection. He foresees
a multitude of commonwealths, crimes, and calamities, centuries of mutual jealousies, hatreds, wars of devastation, till at last the exhausted provinces shall sink into slavery under the yoke of some fortunate conqueror.
some cling to a belief that King George III is sympathetic to their cause, but has been led astray by his dishonest and corrupt ministers.
Oh boy. You sure about that?
In July, at Dickinson's urging, the Second Continental Congress sends a new petition to the King.
We solemnly assure your Majesty that we most ardently desire the former harmony between Great Britain and these colonies may be restored. Your Majesty's ministers, persevering in their measures and proceeding to open hostilities for enforcing them, have compelled us to arm in our own defense. We therefore beseech your Majesty to settle peace through every part of your dominions, with all humility submitting to your Majesty's wise consideration.
It becomes known as the Olive Branch Petition, but it is beaten to London by news and maimed British soldiers from Bunker Hill. In August, George III declares his American colonies to be in open rebellion. The British Empire begins to assemble its might to reclaim the colonies by force.
His Excellency George Washington has arrived amongst us, universally admired. Joy was visible on every countenance. You know what's funny, about George Washington? I think, after he became president, there was debate about what to call him, because, I believe, some actually moved for a bit more royal titles, almost addressing him as His Majesty and stuff like that. And I think he immediately shot back on that, right? Even there were some things he could have been a king if he wanted to, or could have taken the title of king, or that some even wanted him to. It's very funny when I remember that, because just imagine you had to call any president that had stuck, and then you had to call any president His Majesty. That'd be hilarious to be calling Donald Trump His Majesty right now. His Majesty, His Excellency, Donald Trump. To me, that'd be kind of funny, with any American president, but yeah. I don't know.
On the 2nd of July, 1775, General George Washington arrives outside Boston to take command of the newly christened Continental Army. Until recently, he'd been living a relatively quiet life as a Virginia plantation owner and local representative. But his military experience from the French and Indian War, serving as a lieutenant colonel of militia, exceeds that of nearly any other American-born officer. Through an advantageous marriage to Martha Custis, he is also one of the richest men in America, with a natural air of authority. Dr. Benjamin Rush, a congressional delegate from Pennsylvania, observes,
He has so much martial dignity in his deportment that you would distinguish him to be a general and a soldier from among 10,000 people.
Yeah, to put it in more modern terms, the dude has aura. Like, you know, who else can do this?
On arrival, Washington discovers the Continental Army to be in a deplorable state. Many soldiers lack proper muskets, and ammunition remains in critically short supply. There are few cannon, or even uniforms. Supply and logistics are in shambles. Discipline is virtually non-existent. The camp is a jumble of tents, ill-placed latrines, and unfinished earthworks. Officers fraternize with their men, who simply come and go as they please. Washington is aghast, but immediately gets to work. Officers are given sashes or cockades to distinguish them from their men. Severe punishments are introduced for desertion, fighting, and even swearing. Crucially, Washington orders his men be inoculated for smallpox, which has erupted across Massachusetts. This practice, also used by the British, may have saved his army from destruction.
Again, dude immediately went to work. That goes to show you just how experienced he is, right? Like, immediately setting to make things right and turning this almost ragtag bunch into a proper army.
The Continental Congress has appointed several generals to serve under Washington's overall command.
I think I believe this is also where Alexander Hamilton starts to make his rise, because he was very famously, you know, really in close with Washington.
For a mix of practical, military, and political reasons. Some will win fame, others infamy, in the years ahead. Nathaniel Greene, a young Rhode Island Quaker, who's educated himself in the art of war. He will become a close friend of Washington and his most able commander. Charles Lee, an irascible and arrogant career soldier, disillusioned with the mother country. He is arguably the most experienced officer in the colonies, and Washington's second in command. Israel Putnam, a veteran soldier from Connecticut, nicknamed Old Put. He served with distinction in the French and Indian War, and more recently at Bunker Hill. John Sullivan, an aggressive New Hampshire officer who had previously served in the Continental Congress. Horatio Gates, another disillusioned British officer, capable but privately contemptuous of Washington. These men and their officers must now pull together an unruly army summoned from across the colonies. From independent-minded New Englanders to equally stubborn riflemen from Virginia and Pennsylvania. Each man with more instinctive loyalty to his colony than to any shared cause. However, Washington's greatest concern is a lack of gunpowder. By one estimate, there's enough for each man to fire just 9 rounds. This, together with the challenges of supply and discipline, means he can do little more than hold the fortifications around Boston. Fortunately for the Continental Army, the British have problems of their own. Boston is riddled with smallpox. Most British soldiers have been inoculated or exposed to the disease, though some still fall sick. Bostonians themselves suffer much more greatly. Of greater concern, now they're bottled up in Boston, is that British supply lines now stretch more than 3,000 miles back across the Atlantic to Britain.
Yeah, the logistics is insane. Even for like, even though Britannia rules the waves, like that's still gonna take a bit, right? The logistics would be such a nightmare for this scenario.
British ships are now vulnerable to American privateers, and the first vessels of a fledgling continental navy. The supply situation in Boston becomes critical, with starvation a growing fear. That the British find themselves in this predicament is widely blamed on General Gage's leadership. He is recalled to London, and command passes to General William Howe. But under the present circumstances, there is little he can do to change British fortunes.
If that man is not crushed before spring, he will become the most formidable enemy America has.
As the siege of Boston drags on, in Virginia, Governor Lord Dunmore holes up in Norfolk, under the protection of Royal Navy warships. From here, he comes up with a plan to crush the rebellion in Virginia. Across the southern colonies, roughly half the population are enslaved black men, women, and children. Most work on plantations.
Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly, I think where he's gonna get to is that, like, the British were offering slaves freedom to, you know, join them. If I remember correctly, that's what they did.
Where they are treated with appalling brutality. As a result, the white population's greatest fear is a mass slave revolt. In November 1775, Lord Dunmore attempts to turn this fear into reality.
I do require every person capable of bearing arms to resort to His Majesty's standard, or be looked upon as traitors. And I do hereby farther declare all indented servants, Negroes, or others, free, that are able and willing to bear arms, they joining His Majesty's troops as soon as may be.
Yeah, honestly, genius move, especially as we covered about just how big the population is of slaves at the South and stuff. Like, talk about a master move right there.
It is a direct appeal to Virginia's slaves. Freedom for those who take up arms against their rebel masters. Nothing could be more incendiary. Few patriots consider the cause of liberty to extend to enslaved black Americans. And in the South, Dunmore's proclamation threatens the destruction of the entire economy and society itself. Without irony, patriots condemn Dunmore's promise of freedom as a violation of all law, justice, and humanity. To Washington, he is the arch traitor to the rights of humanity.
Oh my gosh.
Within a month, 300 escaped slaves have reached Dunmore's base in Norfolk, where they form the new Royal Ethiopian Regiment. Thousands more will seek freedom behind the British lines before the war is over. The price of Dunmore's proclamation is to turn southern landowners into mortal enemies of the British cause. Norfolk is a loyalist stronghold, but unable to secure supplies for his forces, Dunmore decides to abandon it. In the process, on New Year's Day 1776, Norfolk burns to the ground. Both sides blame the other. It is the largest, but not the last, settlement to be destroyed in the war.
I pity our good general, who has a greater burden on his shoulders and more difficulties to struggle with than I think should fall to the share of so good a man.
That winter, the standoff continues at Boston, with conditions deteriorating for both sides. Life in the American camp is miserable.
We have suffered prodigiously for want of wood. Many regiments have been obliged to eat their provisions raw for want of firing to cook. And notwithstanding, we have burned up all the fences and cut down all the trees for a mile around the camp. Our suffering has been inconceivable.
Yeah, it's often what like I learned about back in school about this, like just the conditions that the American army had were not favorable at all, with like low supplies and gunpowder, stuff like that. It was like not great. It's often you hear about the conditions. That was a lot of focus back then, I remember.
The only good news comes at sea, where American privateers continue to intercept British ships carrying food and supplies. On the 29th of November, they score their biggest prize yet, the brig Nancy, carrying 2,000 muskets and ammunition. But Washington faces another looming crisis. Most of his men have signed up to fight only until the end of 1775. And given the conditions, few plan to stay any longer. December brings heavy snow and the expiry of the first enlistments. Despite the pleading, threats, and curses of their officers, almost half of Washington's men pack up and march for home.
My goodness.
They take with them not only their muskets and equipment, but their hard-won experience. Washington is distraught. By January 1776, his force has been reduced to less than half its summer peak. There are now just 9,000 men under his command.
That is insane to me. Holy crap. Just that much. Wow. Yeah, dude, Washington had so much on his shoulders. My goodness, this guy.
But General Howe's forces are not in much better shape. The British are even considering evacuating Boston. Then, later that month, shocking news arrives in the American camp, carried in pamphlets and letters. King George III has addressed Parliament on the subject of America. From the King's own lips, the Patriots hear their cause condemned as a desperate conspiracy, whose ideas are repugnant to the true constitution of the colonies. He lays all blame for the conflict on the Americans. He promises an overwhelming military response. In that moment, the Patriots' last lingering hopes of reconciliation die. To Americans like General Nathanael Greene, it's nothing short of betrayal.
Heaven hath decreed that tottering empire Britain to irretrievable ruin. And thanks to God, since Providence hath so determined, America must raise an empire of permanent duration, supported upon the grand pillars of truth, freedom, and religion, encouraged by the smiles of justice, and defended by her own patriotic sons.
For Washington, it's the final nail in the coffin of relations with Great Britain.
We are determined to shake off all connections with a state so unjust and unnatural. This I would tell them, not under covert, but in words as clear as the sun in its meridian brightness.
Until now, many patriots have shied away from calls for independence. But the mood has changed. The King's open hostility, the provocations of Lord Dunmore, the blood shed at Bunker Hill. Only a full break from Britain will answer. But Britain is preparing to fight back. Autumn 1775. King George III has decided to punish his rebellious colonies in America. While some British subjects sympathize with the Americans, a growing number see them as the king does.
Dangerous and ill-designing men who forget the allegiance which they owe to the power that has protected them.
The king and his advisors pore over maps and military reports. While seeking to raise a force of 18,000 German auxiliaries to reinforce their army in America.
When once these rebels have felt a smart blow, they will submit.
The king tells his ministers. Across Britain and Ireland, ships are requisitioned. 20,000 soldiers muster at Portsmouth, Cork, and other ports. The largest expeditionary force yet seen in British history will soon be under sail.
Yeah, they're locking in now, essentially. I need not mention to you the great importance of this place and the consequent possession of all Canada. To whomsoever it belongs will the balance turn. Canada's the key to all this.
In Philadelphia, the Second Continental Congress knows that the British will strike soon.
But where?
General Washington commands the main Patriot Army, which besieges the British in Boston. Patriot forces control much of the 13 colonies, with the help of local committees of correspondence, inspection, and safety. But elsewhere in North America, the British remain in control. Their colonies in the West Indies rely on the British military to protect them from imperial rivals and slave revolts. They will not risk rebellion. Florida's population is small and scattered, more worried by the threat of Spanish invasion than British tyranny. Native American tribes assume a watchful neutrality, although most secretly favor the British, seen as the more useful ally. But American patriots hope that Canada might still come over to their cause. The province of Quebec has only been ruled by the British since 1763. Most of its European population is French and Catholic. They have no love for the British, but the recent Quebec Act has restored their rights and privileges and reconciled many to British rule. When overtures arrive from Congress imploring the Canadians to join the rebellion, they are ignored. Right now, there are just 800 British Redcoats in Canada. But Congress knows the British will likely send reinforcements and use Canada as a staging ground to invade the 13 colonies. So Congress decides to strike first. In its own words, to liberate the oppressed inhabitants of Canada. The main advance will be made by the 2,000-strong Northern Army, gathered around Ticonderoga, a disorganized force hardly deserving of the name, but led by a talented Irish officer, General Richard Montgomery. In September 1775, he lays siege to Fort St. Jean, guarding the road to Canada. And with the heavy guns captured at Fort Ticonderoga, pummels it into submission in 6 weeks.
Want to lose weight without losing muscle?
The road to Canada is open. But desertion and sickness have already reduced the Northern Army's strength by half. As the army marches on Quebec, a second force races to join them. Colonel Benedict Arnold, an enterprising young officer from Connecticut, has convinced Washington to give him 2,000 men to reinforce Montgomery. His route is treacherous, through a wilderness of thick forests, rivers, and swamps.
Our march has been attended with an amazing deal of fatigue. I have been much deceived. Our route is longer and has been attended with 1,000 difficulties I never apprehended.
Many of Arnold's men give up and turn back. But in early December, he arrives outside Quebec and links up with Montgomery. Their combined force is just 1,200 men.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Quebec sits on an imposing bluff over the St. Lawrence River. It's the most well-fortified city in North America, with 20-foot walls and 114 cannon. The extremely able British governor, Guy Carleton, has prepared for a siege, recruiting hundreds of militia and stockpiling ammunition and supplies. The Americans are under pressure. It is midwinter. And just as at Boston, they face the prospect of hundreds of troops going home in a few days, when their enlistments expire. So, Arnold and Montgomery decide to risk an immediate assault.
Yeah, these conditions, you can't wait, right? Especially with the ever-increasing desertion and just people like, alright, our time's up, we're out of here. So, you know, just dang.
In the early hours of the 31st of December, under cover of a blizzard, the Americans attack. But it is a disaster. They are met by organized, determined British resistance. General Montgomery is killed. His men routed. Colonel Arnold is badly wounded, while hundreds of his men are surrounded and captured. The remnants of the Northern Army, about 600 men, are isolated, frozen, ravaged by smallpox, and hundreds of miles from friendly territory. For now, Arnold stubbornly holds his position outside Quebec. But it is clear he won't last long without reinforcements.
Mm-hmm. Remember, it is the 5th of March, and the avenge of the death of your brethren.
That winter, Henry Knox, a 25-year-old bookseller from Boston, now a colonel in the Patriot Army, oversees a stunning logistical operation. The movement of 59 heavy guns, some weighing more than 2 tons, across 300 miles of snow, mountains and frozen rivers, using sleds, oxen and horses. These are the guns of Fort Ticonderoga, which Knox has promised General Washington he shall have for his siege of Boston, where they may well turn the tide. Knox arrives on the 27th of January 1776, with all 59 guns not far behind. A jubilant Washington promotes Knox to commander of the artillery. Washington's first instinct is to use the guns to support a direct assault on Boston, across the frozen Charles River. But his war council persuades him to adopt a more cautious approach, to fortify Dorchester Heights, from where the guns can threaten the British fleet at anchor. Without the fleet guaranteeing resupply, the British Army...
Yeah, that's actually incredibly smart, because yeah, again, like an all-out assault is always gonna be a risk, especially like with the, you know, the numerical concerns that America is facing at this point in the army. Yeah, I guess more cautious, like being able to just get them to submit without having to kill a lot of your own guys violently taking the city probably is the more favorable of the two options, you know?
Will have to evacuate. Tons of timber, stone and hay are discreetly gathered at Roxbury, while the Americans open a nightly bombardment on Boston to mask their preparations. The British answer with twice the firepower. On the third night, Patriot forces used the cover of the bombardment to quietly haul 20 guns onto Dorchester Heights.
Nice.
By dawn the next day, they have entrenched the position and garrisoned it with 6,000 troops. The British are horrified. They open up with a
genius move, bro. Like the diversion and getting that, like definitely the great move right there. That's awesome.
Massive cannonade. But their fire does little damage. The British prepare an assault, but snow and hurricane-strength winds force General Howe to call it off. With his men now close to starvation and decimated by sickness, Howe decides he must evacuate the city. In exchange for an unopposed departure, the British agree not to destroy Boston. On the 20th of March, the British blow up their supply base at Castle William, then sail for Halifax to regroup and resupply.
Great victory. The taking of Boston, that maneuver there. And definitely good on Washington, because his original plan of an all-out assault. Very good that he listens to the advice of those around him. You know, he's not arrogant despite his own experience, and yeah, overall, amazing maneuver there.
After more than 10 months, the siege is over. The British have been defeated, and news of Washington's victory spreads across the colonies. sparking celebrations and jubilation. A Connecticut newspaper proclaims,
"The joy of our friends in Boston on seeing the victorious and gallant troops of their country enter the town almost on the heels of the barbarous oppressors was inexplicably great."
A British lieutenant remarks,
"I hope the rebels will get heartily thrashed. I would be content to lose a leg and an arm to see them totally defeated and their whole country laid waste."
I could not stay in Boston and feel safe with a set of lawless rebels whose actions have disgraced human nature and who have treated all the king's loyal subjects with great cruelty.
not all Americans rejoice to see the British defeated. Those who opposed the rebellion, now termed Loyalists, make up around 1 in 5 of the population. Each has their own motives, which are diverse and often complex. Some are recent immigrants to America with strong social and economic ties to Britain. Some are doggedly loyal to king and country, including Anglicans, for whom George III is head of the Church of England. Others fear an American republic will lead only to anarchy and mob rule, and can point to many historical precedents.
Which is better, to be ruled by one tyrant 3,000 miles away, or by 3,000 tyrants not a mile away?
Many fear the horrors of armed conflict.
Our once happy land is plunged deeper into a ruthless war. Torrents of blood will be spilt, and thousands reduced to beggary and wretchedness.
Many might have chosen to sit out the conflict. But local patriot committees of inspection and safety that have sprung up across the colonies make that increasingly difficult. In the absence of royal authority, they have taken up many of the duties of local government and keep an eye on potential enemies. By 1776, anyone suspected of Loyalist sympathies is liable to be investigated by such a committee, or targeted by a rowdy patriot mob, and often driven out of their home.
That violent spirit in the Patriots of harassing and oppressing the Loyalists has spread, and I have been obliged, a little more than a month since, to leave my parishes, my family and friends, and to fly into exile in order to escape violence and imprisonment, if not immediate death.
Some Loyalists leave to fall.
Yeah, definitely the slogan "Join or Die" was very literal, you know? I will say, I'm very happy that he's covering this, because it's often easy to think of, like, America, like I mentioned earlier, it's just one giant unified thing. Every American was on the same exact page. We're gonna, once the war kicked off, we all locked in, and obviously I'm really happy he's showcasing that, things were very complicated in America. There were still plenty who were on the fence, and those who did not agree with this, and I'm very happy he's showing that America, was not as united as you think they were at this point, which is always the best, and I'm liking looking at the statistics of this.
On their own militia companies that clash with patriot partisans for years to come. The conflict will divide communities and families, pitching neighbor against neighbor, father against son.
Hi, I'm JT, and I made Result Hunter, the search engine for
The king and his ministers believe New England to be the hotbed of rebellion, and that especially in the south, most of the population remain loyal, bullied into silence by a minority of troublemakers. A British show of force, it is hoped, will lead thousands of such people to come forward and volunteer to serve in loyalist units. In the Carolinas, British governors Josiah Martin and William Campbell have been calling out for just such a measure since they were forced from their homes by patriot mobs the previous summer. At last, in January 1776, they receive news that Admiral Parker is on his way with 50 ships and 3,000 soldiers. But it is a tiny force for such a mission, hastily planned and poorly coordinated to boot. On the 27th of February, a loyalist force in North Carolina duly marches to join Governor Martin on the coast. But at Moores Creek Bridge, they are ambushed by a larger Patriot force. Most of the loyalists are new Scottish immigrants and launch the last known Highland Charge with swords drawn. They are gunned down, and more than 1,000 loyalists are taken prisoner in the ensuing rout. Admiral Parker decides to attack the port of Charleston, held by around 6,000 rebels. It is the richest city in North America, and the point of entry for more than 100,000 enslaved Africans in the last century. Its capture will give the British control of a major port and surely inspire more loyalists to rally to the King's cause. But to take Charleston, the British must first capture the rebel fort on Sullivan's Island, overlooking the harbour. Parker's attack is a fiasco. Naval fire is ineffective against the fort's spongy palmetto logs, while shore batteries drive off British transports and inflict heavy damage on Royal Navy warships. The failure of Parker's expedition is a heavy blow to British hopes in the southern colonies.
Dang, yeah, that's a disaster. Holy crap.
The only other British force in the region is Lord Dunmore's collection of sailors, cast-off troops, and his Ethiopian regiment of former slaves. But they have been decimated by smallpox and typhus. The hopeless situation leads Dunmore to withdraw his forces and return to London, abandoning the Loyalists of Virginia. By July 1776, from the Chesapeake to Charleston, there is not a single British soldier.
We have all the reason to expect the worst. As far as their power extends, they will inflict every species of calamity upon us.
April 1776. For the first time since its formation, the Continental Army is on the march. The soldiers are cheered through every town. Morale is sky high. Their destination is New York City, the largest harbour on the East Coast, where Washington expects the British to strike next. From Georgia to New England, there are now growing calls for total separation from Britain. The desire for independence is fueled, in no small part, by a new pamphlet, Common Sense.
The one-of-a-kind
Yeah, by Thomas Paine, a very influential figure and one of the most important writings of the Revolution.
Its author is the British radical Thomas Paine, now living in Philadelphia. In persuasive, plain English, he mocks the entire basis of monarchy, while praising the principle of self-government through elected representatives.
Of more worth is one honest man to society than all the crowned ruffians that ever lived. The cause of America is in a great measure the cause of all mankind. The birthday of a new world is at hand.
Loyalists, like Nicholas Cresswell, are unimpressed.
One of the vilest things that was ever published to the world, full of false representations, lies, calumny, and treason, whose principles are to subvert all kingly governments and erect an independent republic.
But patriots control the printing presses. An estimated 100,000 copies of Common Sense are printed and sold across the colonies. Among the upper and merchant classes, there have been calls for independence for many months. Now, Common Sense persuades thousands of ordinary folk that it is the only solution.
Yeah, like you mentioned with the word of the common way of his writing and the effect it had, that's mainly the thing, is getting, like, you know, the average Joe on board, which then will even add greater to the cause, you know, because so far we've been hearing a lot about the more wealthier higher-ups of American society, but, you know, this is really important. Like I said, Thomas Paine's Common Sense is a pretty big, pivotal moment also.
That June, in Philadelphia, Congress meets daily for heated debates over independence. Congress has decided the colonies must be unanimous in their decision. Backroom deals and last-minute U-turns take it down to the wire. On the 2nd of July, 1776, Congress votes in favor of independence.
This is also, like I mentioned the George Washington one, this is also right up there, I think, as like one of the most famous paintings in American history. I've seen this a lot too.
2 days later, the 4th of July, it formally adopts a written Declaration of Independence, drafted by John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston.
Yeah, I think this is another part. I guess you can maybe lump it up in American mythology. Usually most people would just attribute Thomas Jefferson kind of alone, you know? Or just say, oh yeah, Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. And while it is true he had a big hand in it, he wasn't completely alone. This document, his hand was not the only one. But I think that's another thing you can chalk up to American mythology. You know, he wasn't alone in this.
We hold these truths
to be self-evident
that all men are created equal, that they are
except the slaves. Just looks at the slaves, except you. No, I'm sorry. I'm always harping on that because it is something I actually do have a problem with. Like, you know, that about the whole slavery issue. And it is actually an issue that many of the founding fathers actually recognize that was a problem. Like, even Thomas Jefferson, I think it's been said that, like, he recognized slavery and as an injustice. And I think he even tried, maybe, to try to put it in the Declaration of Independence, but again, like, stuff and factors. And yeah, you know, some of the founding fathers, yeah, well, not just some, but, you know, own slaves. Even George Washington, for all his virtues and stuff, he was a slave owner. And it's not like these guys didn't fully realize about how slavery ain't that great of a thing to do, but still, I guess motivated by the practicality and how entrenched slavery was to the economy and stuff like that, didn't fully, you know, it is something that I am a little unhappy by the American history, the fact that we still had slavery for as long as we did. Despite knowing all the practical reasons as to why it wasn't addressed earlier, I still kind of wish it had been. Because every time you bring up the whole, we're doing this for freedom, and then meanwhile the slaves are just there, still being enslaved, It still is a beautiful piece of writing, though, like the Declaration, not to take away from it. It is very beautiful and amazing.
Endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty,
and the pursuit of happiness.
Ironically, the Declaration is closely modelled on English precedents, particularly the Declaration of Right and Bill of Rights of 1689.
Yeah, obviously, you see some British influence in some American stuff, even like common law. Like I said, I'm taking like paralegal law classes, and this semester for a few of my classes, I was learning a lot about common law, and how essentially a lot of British ideas that originated from England, you can find inspiration even in American government, which makes sense because these guys were Englishmen and identified as such, a lot of them, so it makes sense that you would see it, echoes of it even to this day still around, which is a really cool thing. Is this working? Okay, good.
I didn't think that
Gosh
factor could help me
darn
reach
it.
my protein goals. Boy, was
Debate and revisions continue until the last moment, including the removal of a paragraph criticizing the slave trade.
Yep. Again, Thomas Jefferson is a very intelligent man. Wasn't he also a big inventor? Also, like the swindle chair. Wait. Let me look at this. Yeah, I said swindle. That's a completely different word. I meant swivel chair. And then you have Benjamin Franklin and his stuff with electricity. Yeah, the early inventions and genius of the founding fathers is something I can't deny. And I guess I owe old Tommy J thanks, because heck, I'm in a swivel chair right now, so I kind of do owe him something. But yeah, he's a very interesting guy, no doubt intelligent, no doubt a great man, but he's also a man of contradiction, someone who recognized the injustices of slavery, but kept slaves and stuff. You often hear the word contradiction come up with Thomas Jefferson, and depending on who you are, that you'll either see him in a much more positive light as for far more complexities, or in a more negative light of realizing bad things yet still kind of doing it. So it depends who you are. I've heard both sides of the argument, some kind of looking a bit more down on him because of it, and then others being more defended. I guess it really depends on who you are. My feelings are a bit more mixed. Again, I understand that if you put yourself in the perspective of these men at the time where they are, it's a complicated issue, slavery. Again, I wish it had been dealt with then and now on the creation of America. I wish that they had gotten rid of it. I understand, I've heard things weren't that simple, but still though, I do want to acknowledge the greatness of Thomas Jefferson and his genius, and also George Washington, even if I personally don't like the fact that slavery was around and that they practiced it. But I also understand that, you know, it is something that was around, and it's something that many were relying on, even though I personally am really against it, and it's something I'm kind of ashamed apart in American history. But, well, you can't change what's been done, and it is what it is, and it eventually got put off until, you know, the Civil War. So, yeah. I kind of just wish it had been dealt with earlier. Personally, I'll always stand by that, but I can still kind of see the realities of the situation and see that it was a complex issue.
In order to appease the southern colonies. Eventually, all 56 delegates sign, pledging
our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Grand demonstrations erupt across what are now commonly called the 13 United States of America.
Chilled.
There is a mock funeral for King George in Georgia.
Wow.
His portrait is burned in Delaware. Royal buildings are defaced in New Hampshire. In New York, a 15-foot statue of the king is toppled. Its lead melted into 42,088 bullets for the war effort. The colonies are now independent states. Unless the British Army can reclaim them for the crown.
The fate of unborn millions will now depend under God on the courage and conduct of this army.
For more than a year, the rebels in America have acted almost with impunity. No longer. On the 6th of May 1776, General Burgoyne arrives in Quebec City from Britain with 7,000 reinforcements. Brigadier General Benedict Arnold has maintained a blockade for 5 months. But now, massively outnumbered, he must make a rapid retreat. In June, General Sullivan takes command and orders a counterattack at Trois-Rivières. It's a disaster. The retreat continues, and Montreal falls to the British. Meanwhile, Washington prepares for the defense of New York with the bulk of the Continental Army. For weeks, he's anxiously awaited the arrival of the British. Then, on the 29th of June, ships are sighted on the horizon. With each passing hour, more and more are spotted. 30, 70, more than 100 sail.
Yeah, this is where we need to lock it even more, right? Like, holy crap. Oh, what a frightening sight that must have been, seeing that emerge.
You can scarcely conceive of the distress and anxiety. The city in an uproar, the alarm guns firing, the troops repairing to their posts. My God, may I never experience the like feelings again.
General Howe has arrived with 120 ships and 10,000 soldiers at his command. They have spent the last 3 months training and preparing in Halifax, burning to avenge their defeat at Boston. Soon, Howe will be joined by Admiral Parker's southern expedition and a vast fleet from England, commanded by his brother, Admiral Richard Howe. In total, 32,000 soldiers, 12,000 sailors, and 400 ships are converging on New York. Almost half the military might of the British Empire.
Insane.
British troops land unopposed on Staten Island, welcomed with cheers from the small, loyal population. And learning of the Declaration of Independence 10 days later, General Howe has a reply. 2 Royal Navy frigates sail up the Hudson and bombard Manhattan with impunity. The British are back.
Yeah, the Empire Strikes Back. This is really like the Empire Strikes Back moment, huh? Like the feeling of this, like, we're coming back in greater, stronger numbers. I thought all London was afloat.
The 22nd of August, 1776. 4,000 British soldiers in 75 flat-bottomed boats cross the Hudson and land at Gravesend Bay, Long Island. They are welcomed by a jubilant population of loyalists who bring food, supplies, and knowledge of the local terrain. Soon, this force will grow to 20,000. It's been nearly 2 months since General William Howe arrived off New York. Finally, in a trickle of transports and warships from Britain, Ireland, Germany, and the Carolinas, his full force has gathered. Howe now commands the largest expeditionary force Britain has ever assembled, and it's ready to be unleashed against the American rebels. His first target, Patriot forces holding a series of ridges around Brooklyn. If they can be defeated, Long Island will fall, New York will be defenseless, and the rebellion could be crushed. In New York City, General George Washington commands 20,000 men of the Continental Army. A few units, like the Delaware Blues and 1st Maryland Regiment, are well drilled and disciplined, but most are under-trained and ill-equipped. Desertion is rampant. The camps are riddled with typhus and dysentery. About a quarter of the army is sick or absent. At this critical juncture, Washington is racked with indecision. He fears the British landing on Long Island may be a diversion, and so holds back more than half his army to defend Manhattan and the Hudson River. His troops on Long Island are widely dispersed. 6,000 under Israel Putnam are in fortifications around Brooklyn. 3,000 more, under Generals Sullivan and Sterling, hold forested hills to Putnam's front. They are spread over 4 miles and must guard the 3 main passes through the Heights of Guan. At dawn on the 27th of August, they are attacked by 5,000 redcoats. The crackle of muskets and roar of cannon fills the air as volleys are traded. It's the first time the Continentals have faced the enemy on open ground, and so far, they are holding their own. But it is a trap. As Sullivan sends troops from his center to reinforce Sterling, he hears the sound of gunfire to his rear. To his horror, he realizes he has been outflanked.
Oh, The flank, the oldest trick in the book, strikes again. Oh boy.
General Howe has used a fourth, lesser-known pass to swing round the American line with 10,000...
I'll never see the end of the flanking maneuver, will I? It'll never go away, bro. Wow.
Troops. 5,000 Hessians now charge forward in the center. These German troops have a fearsome reputation and terrify the Americans. In an instant, order and discipline are gone. It is a race to escape. Only the 1st Maryland and Delaware battalions, regarded as the Army's finest, hold their ranks. Outnumbered 10 to 1, the 1st Maryland mounts a desperate rearguard action and is cut to pieces. Washington, watching from Brooklyn, is appalled.
Good God, what brave fellows I must this day lose.
The disaster at Long Island is a major blow to the American cause. There are just 400 British casualties. The Americans lose more than 2,000, including Generals Sterling and Sullivan.
Ooh, that's a disaster, my goodness.
Both captured, though they are later exchanged on parole. The rest of the Continentals flee into Brooklyn, where their backs are now against the East River. An immediate assault by Howe might have ended the rebellion that very day. But fearing a second Bunker Hill, and believing the Americans are trapped, he instead orders his men to begin digging siege lines. The following day, there is torrential rain. Washington's position is perilous. The only reason he's not been cut off by the British fleet is a steady northeasterly wind, which could change at any moment. Early on the 30th, under cover of darkness and a fortuitous morning fog, Washington evacuates his army across the East River to Manhattan. It is a silent, disciplined and organized withdrawal. An American lieutenant recalls,
"In the history of warfare, I do not recollect a more fortunate retreat."
Honestly, it was super fortunate. Holy crap, yeah. Like, they literally could have been destroyed then and there. Like, talk about, like, one of the worst situations ever, and the fact that Washington managed to pull this off, I mean, thanks to the weather and, you know, the British not advancing, this really was like a life-saving, one of those life-saving moments, right?
Washington has narrowly avoided catastrophe, but the onslaught has only just begun.
We learn by Chess the habit of not being discouraged by present bad appearances, the habit of hoping for a favorable change.
September 1776. 2 weeks after his victory at Long Island, General Howe has paused his advance to offer peace terms. He earnestly hopes some form of reconciliation is still possible. In fact, he and his brother, Admiral Richard Howe, alongside their military commands, have been appointed peace commissioners, authorized by King and Parliament to issue pardons and restore peace to the colonies. But in a meeting with Congressmen John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and Edward Rutledge, nothing is achieved.
Forces have been sent out and towns have been burnt. We cannot now expect happiness under the domination of Great Britain. All former attachments have been obliterated.
About half of New York's population has already fled the city. Many who remain are loyalists. With British ships anchored in the Hudson and East Rivers, Washington decides he must abandon the city. On the 12th of September, he begins the evacuation. Troops and wagons are still leaving 3 days later when Howe strikes at Kips Bay. 4,000 British and German troops, supported by 80 naval guns, face little opposition. The Continental Army dissolves into a stream of fugitives as the British consolidate their bridgehead. Washington attempts to rally his men, but is ignored. The general snaps.
Are these the men with which I am to defend America?
Later that day, General Howe enters New York to a hero's welcome.
Thus, this town, which these blustering rebels had taken such wonderful pains to fortify, was given up in 2 or 3 hours without any defense or the least appearance of a manly resistance.
Dang.
The following day, the Americans repulse a British column advancing on Harlem Heights. A small reprieve, but as noted by Pastor Schukirk of New York,
the merry tones on drums and fifes had ceased.
I am wearied almost to death with the retrograde motions of things.
The sick, the aged, women and children, half naked, were taking refuge from the fire. The terror was increased by the horrid noise of the burning and falling houses, the confused voices of so many men, the shrieks and cries of the women and children.
On the hot and dry night of the 20th of September 1776, fire consumes nearly 1/4 of New York City. It is not clear whether it was started by accident or on purpose, but it is a heavy blow to those still living in the city, especially with winter approaching.
Oh no.
In October, the British are on the move again. They sail up the East River with 12,000 men, looking to outflank the rebels. They land at Pell's Point. After a sharp fight, Washington is forced to withdraw to White Plains.
These meals changed everything for me.
10 days later, Howe attacks again. Hessian troops of Colonel Rahl's regiment charge forward, driving the rebels back to Chatterton Hill. Here they hold firm, pouring heavy fire into the advancing columns. But eventually, British and Hessian numbers tell. The Delaware Blues form the rear guard, as Washington's men beat a hasty retreat. The battle costs both sides around 200 casualties. Defeat after defeat has caused American morale to plummet. Almost half the army has deserted. More do so every day.
What a disaster, holy crap. Again, the fact that Washington managed to keep an army at all is like a very telling feat on itself, because just the ever-growing just desertions and stuff, man. This guy, really a legend for keeping this going at all.
Washington's leadership is called into question. Charles Lee, his second in command, who has just returned from South Carolina, writes,
"He has that fatal indecision of mind which in war is a much greater disqualification than stupidity.
Holy crap.
Or even want of personal courage.
Many now look to Lee to save the cause, especially after Washington blunders again. 15 miles south of White Plains.
You know, this is something very telling, is that, like, Washington isn't like a Napoleon, for instance, or someone who just, like, won, like, endlessly. Like, Washington has been noted as taking, like, a good amount of L's, you know what I mean? Like, his fair share of losses, but, you know, whatever tactical failures or defeats he had, he was never fully defeated in a sense, like, beaten, yes, but never broken, I think is the way I'm trying to phrase this. And, you know, still managing the grand strategy of things to still keep an army and, you know, ultimately, like, you know, never be completely destroyed, which is really more, where I feel like the praise is due, because he wasn't just some dominant force winning every single encounter. Like, that's not, Washington. He had a different kind of strength that still, he was the perfect man for the job, is all I can say.
Well behind the British lines, 2,800 Continentals hold a fort that bears Washington's name. Built to block British ships from entering the Hudson, it has proven totally ineffective. But Washington dithers, leaving the decision to withdraw to General Greene, who decides to keep the isolated garrison in place. On the morning of the 16th of November, Howe launches an assault on the fort with 8,000 men from all directions. The fighting lasts all morning, but by midday, the entire American garrison has been captured or killed. The British have inflicted yet another major blow on the rebel cause.
Ooh. Yeah.
The invasion of New York has been a stunning success for Howe.
Certainly.
New Jersey will be next.
I hope this is the dark part of the night, which is genuinely just before day.
Expedia is the place to bundle and save on flights.
With British troops crossing the Hudson in force, Washington retreats across New Jersey to the Delaware River. A pursuit begins. He has fewer than 6,000 men, but hopes to pick up new volunteers en route. Instead, he finds the population in a state of apathy.
A thick cloud of darkness and gloom covered the land, and despair was seen in almost every countenance.
On the 30th of November, Howe issues a proclamation offering a pardon to all rebels who swear a new oath of allegiance to the crown. In the words of a New Jersey farmer writing to his family,
"You can come down and receive protection, and return home without molestation on the part of the king's troops. And you best know the situation of the provincial army. He who stays out to the last will undoubtedly fare the worst."
Thousands in New Jersey and New York will eventually swear the oath. Among them, 2 former members of Congress and Richard Stockton, signatory of the Declaration of Independence.
Wow.
On the 1st of December 1776, enlistments expire for half of Washington's army. Without a second thought, 2,000 men leave for home. as snow begins to fall.
Yeah, this is definitely the darkest part of the war. My gosh, Washington is getting thrashed right now. Like, yeah, just problems on all fronts, right? It's a miracle, like, America pulls through at all.
Washington's depleted band retreats across the Delaware, destroying any boats they can't take with them. Philadelphia is evacuated in chaos. Congressman Robert Morris recalls,
"Our people knew not the hardships and calamities of war when they so boldly dared Britain to arms. Every man was then a bold patriot, felt himself equal to the contest.
Yep.
But now, when we are fairly engaged, when death and ruin stare us in the face, and when nothing but the most intrepid courage can rescue us from contempt and disgrace, sorry I am to say it. Many of those who were foremost in noise now shrink, coward-like, from the danger, and are..."
Yeah, essentially, they were all talk and no, or all bark and no bite. So, something like that, right?
begging pardon without striking a blow.
For Howe, the campaign is won. He returns to New York, leaving 14,000 men to garrison New Jersey for the winter, and issue a growing list of pardons. He also sends General Clinton to retake Newport, Rhode Island, which he does without losing a man. A few days later, Washington's second-in-command, General Lee, is staying in a tavern some distance from his troops, when he is surprised by British cavalry and captured.
Oh no.
Many of his 5,000 troops take the chance to desert. The ones who stay dutifully march with General Sullivan to join Washington on the Delaware. But even with these reinforcements, the Continental Army can barely muster 6,000 men. And enlistments for most of these soldiers will expire in just a couple of weeks.
Yo, I can only imagine what Washington is thinking or feeling, just the sheer stress. I would lose my crap. I'd be like, we're done. There's no hope. Oh my gosh. Wow.
With the fate of America in the balance, Washington decides to risk everything on a bold strike.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country, but he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman.
Washington's plan of attack is bold and complex. 3 columns will cross the freezing Delaware River at night, at 3 separate points, and attack the Hessian garrison at Trenton before dawn. Ewing and Cadwalader will lead 2 of the columns in diversionary attacks on Assunpink Creek Bridge and Bordentown, while Washington's main column, 2,400 strong, crosses upriver, splits into 2 wings, and surrounds the town from west and north. The operation begins at dusk.
Yeah, very interesting maneuver. Obviously, Washington sees that he's on the back foot. He's on a race against time. Like, he's losing men, attrition, desertion, it's all piling up. So he's like, I gotta do something. And again, bold plan, very complex, and requires, like, perfect execution, right? to perform. And we've seen plans like complicated to a degree like this, and usually they don't work out because like when you have to divide so much of your army and everyone has to move, it reason we've seen it fail is because like, yeah, coordination, sometimes some might get bogged down, sometimes others may not be directly on time when they need to. So this is a very, very risky maneuver that he's doing. But again, this is like one of those all or nothings, I need to do something or else, you know, situations. So yeah, I get it, like, now or never, baby.
On the 25th of December, Christmas Day.
Bites.
The Delaware is fast-moving, clogged with ice, and nearly 300 yards wide. Ferrying men, guns and horses across it, in the dark, in flat-bottomed boats, amid hail and snow, is an act of stunning audacity. Thanks to experienced oarsmen among the Pennsylvania militia and artillery companies, the crossing is completed without disaster. But Washington's column arrives on the far bank 3 hours behind schedule, while Ewing and Cadwalader both abort their missions. Washington decides to push on.
It's stuff like that, like I'm telling you, like multifaceted like attacks like that usually always have complications. Even Alexander the Great tried doing this, like right when he was battling the Indian king and he got bogged down. Like, yeah, it was very bold, but yeah, there are just some things you can't foresee or perfectly time.
Regardless, the weather is so bad, he reasons, the enemy will surely not expect an attack. His troops split into two...
Very much like the Battle of Narva, right? Just, we're gonna attack when the enemy least expects it, and it's also like, you know, winter and stuff.
Columns as planned, and begin their advance. They make slow progress through the blizzard, but the men remain in good order and are determined. Trenton is garrisoned by 1,400 Hessian soldiers under Colonel Rall. He's been warned about an imminent attack, but after a skirmish with some American militia on Christmas Day, believes that threat to have passed. So that night, amidst a blizzard, on Christmas, his guard is down. Shortly after dawn, Washington attacks. Greene's men drive Hessian outposts back into town. As the garrison forms up in the streets, Knox positions his cannon to fire on them. Then Sullivan's men charge into the town with bayonets fixed. They seize the Assunpink Creek Bridge.
Amazing that despite his original plan going a bit awry due to like, you know, the timing, the fact that he still win and it worked out anyways is amazing.
Rall is mortally wounded, attempting to organize a counterattack. It's all over in less than an hour.
Wow.
The Hessians lose 100 killed and wounded and 900 captured.
Ooh.
The Americans, just 5 wounded.
Dang.
It is a stunning...
Yeah, incredibly stunning victory.
And much needed victory. As the Hessian prisoners are marched back to Philadelphia, morale soars in Washington's army. But the campaign is not done yet. Howe, learning of the disaster, sends General Cornwallis and 8,000 men to hunt down and destroy Washington's army. With enlistments on the verge of expiring, Washington makes an appeal to the army.
My brave fellows, you have done all I asked you to do, and more than could be reasonably expected. But your country is at stake, your wives, your houses, and all that you hold dear. You have worn yourselves out with fatigues and hardships, but we know not how to spare you. If you will consent to stay 1 month longer, you will render that service to the cause of liberty and to your country which you can probably never do under any other circumstance.
Wow.
His stirring words and a bounty worth 2 months' pay convince almost all the troops to stay.
Again, goes to show you his power and his character of keeping an army and doing this. Like, again, George Washington, bro, he really was I could not imagine anyone else at this time leading the army.
Leaving 1,200 men to hold Princeton, Cornwallis advances on Trenton. His march is slowed by rebel riflemen and a sudden thaw which turns the roads to mud. When he arrives, he finds the rebels entrenched behind Assunpink Creek. Probing attacks are defeated and cost 300 British casualties. With darkness approaching, Cornwallis decides...
Yeah, you know, I have to say that the new blood effects is something I've been taking note of this entire series. It's very interesting. I don't know, usually, like, they usually don't do blood effects, but, it's new, but I kind of like it, actually.
...to wait until morning to launch a full-scale attack. This is just what Washington wants. Overnight, his men march north in silence, through rugged country, to attack the garrison at Princeton. They arrive at the perfect moment.
The way Washington has now seized the initiative, when he was on the back foot, like, he was almost like, you know, just on the back foot as he was being attacked, but now he's the one taking initiative, attacking when they least expect, dictating the pace of the war, and yeah, he who takes initiative usually succeeds.
Just as the British are setting off to join Cornwallis. They form line just in time to meet the American attack. There is sharp fighting. At first, the British have the better of it. Then, Washington charges into the fray. An American officer witnesses the moment.
I shall never forget what I felt when I saw him brave all the dangers of the field, and his important life hanging as it were by a single hair, with 1,000 deaths flying around him.
Awe-inspiring, amazing.
Outnumbered, under heavy fire, the British fall back in disorder. They have suffered around 400 casualties. The Americans lose fewer than 100 men.
Amazing.
Is another stunning victory for the Americans. Perhaps Washington's greatest operational flourish. But the Continental Army is exhausted, low on supplies, and surrounded by dangers. Washington is persuaded not to risk more. He makes for Morristown to find safe winter quarters. The battles of Trenton and Princeton are neither large nor particularly costly for the British. They are, however, desperately needed rays of hope in the Patriots' darkest hour. What's more, as the Continental Army continues to prove its mettle against the British, foreign observers are taking notice. In the royal courts of France and Spain.
Yep, France will go on to be very important in the American Revolution.
There are many who would delight to see their old British rival humiliated and their own defeats avenged. The rebellion in Britain's American colonies is about to become a global war. Big thanks to our historical consultant.
Alright, awesome video. Overall, it's really cool to get to kind of like revisit some of this stuff. And again, Epic History, amazing in the way he narrates and portrays history. Overall, amazing. I'm really happy to have looked at this. And yeah, guys, I'm gonna end it right here because this video is super long. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone.